Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Good morning, everyone. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, city council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia.
Councilmember David O.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, colleagues.
And also in attendance, we have Councilmember Jamie Gaudier.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues, and good morning to the public.
Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present. This hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Rules regarding bills number 210468, 210469, 210470, 210361, 210445, 210446, 210471, 210484, 210449, 210473, 210482, 210483, 210479, 210480, 210467, 210474, and 210225. Will the clerk please read the titles of the bills?
Bill number 210468, a bill to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Thompson Street, 6th Street, Girard Avenue, Percy Street, Harper Street, and 13th Street, and to amend Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by creating the Girard Avenue Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210469, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by amending the North Central Philadelphia Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210470, amending Chapter 14-900 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Signs by providing for new sign controls entitled 1900 Market Street Digital Display Sign Regulations, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210361, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Section 14-504 entitled Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210445, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising and consolidating provisions of Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by amending Section 14-524 entitled 4th District Overlay District and Section 14-527 entitled Wynnefield District Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210446, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Chapter 14-600 entitled Use Regulations by amending use standards for historically designated properties and making related changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210471, authorizing non-accessory parking on the premises located at 4422 to 24 Ridge Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210484, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Broad Street, Erie Avenue, Huntington Park Avenue, Wissahickon Avenue, Railroad Right-of-Way, Clarissa Street, Wianata Street, Germantown Avenue, Huntington Park Avenue, and Roosevelt Boulevard. Bill number 210449, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising a table within Section 14-701, Dimensional Standards, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210473, amending Chapter 14-1000 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Historic Preservation to establish a temporary demolition moratorium with respect to properties in the area of Christian Street between Broad and 20th Streets, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210482, amending Chapter 14-500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by creating a new section entitled Heliport Hazard Control Overlay Districts and making related changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210483, amending the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land within an area bounded by Allegheny Avenue, Collins Street, Westmoreland Street, Tulip Street, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210479, to amend the master plan for the University of Pennsylvania by areas of land located within an area bounded by Chestnut Street, 33rd Street, Ludlow Street, and 34th Street. Bill number 210480, to amend Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Civic Center Boulevard, University Avenue, Spruce Street, and 34th Street. Bill number 210467, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Cecil B. Moore Avenue, 20th Street, Oxford Street, and 21st Street. Bill number 210474, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Section 14-702 entitled Floor Area Height and Housing Unit Density Bonuses and making related changes, all under certain terms and conditions. And finally, Bill number 210225, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by amending Section 14-502 entitled Center City Overlay District by establishing and adding a new sub-area within the Broad area entitled South Broad Street Gateway, and making related changes, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much, Brett. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for the witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before we begin, please let the record reflect that Bill number 210225 is being held at the request of the sponsor and will be heard at a later date. Will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210468?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. This is Mark Squillo. I just want to be recorded as present. I'm sorry.
Yes, for the record, I want to acknowledge that Councilman Bobby Heenan is present as well as Councilman Mark Squillo. Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210468?
We have Paula Brumblow-Burns.
Hi. Good morning, Chair Johnson and members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumblow-Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210468, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Parker for Council President Clark. Bill number 210468 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Thompson Street, 6th Street, Girard Avenue, Percy Street, Harper Street, and 13th Street, and it will also amend Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by creating the GAO, Girard Avenue Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. The proposed bill will decrease the density allowed on Girard Avenue. All CMX 2.5 commercial mixed-use properties and RM2 residential multifamily properties will be rezoned to CMX2 commercial mixed-use between 9th Street and 13th Street. This will decrease the allowable height from 55 feet to 38 feet. These properties will still be eligible to use the mixed income housing bonus to achieve additional density. The proposed overlay goes further by creating a maximum height limit on all properties from 2nd Street to Broad Street on Girard Avenue to 38 feet, which includes reducing the opportunity to earn height bonuses through the mixed income housing bonus. The code requires us to ask whether the goals of a new zoning overlay can be met by changing the base zoning. The answer to this overlay is yes. Changing industrial commercial mixed use and CMX 3 and 4 blocks to CMX 2 would limit their reuse, but it would still be preferable to a zoning overlay. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210468 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 and recommended approval of the zoning map changes, but not for approval of the height overlay. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions and comments from members of the committee? Okay, hearing none at this time, we will take a brief pause to allow members of the public who have registered for public comment on this particular bill to be called into this virtual meeting.
Mr. Chair, council support is calling the individual right now. It'll just be one moment.
Hello.
Hello. Can you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Oh, yeah. My name is Diane Monroe, Chair of the 14th Ward Democratic Executive Committee, RCO.
Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Diane
yes, I can
Monroe.
hear you.
Okay.
I think you have to turn down, I guess it's the TV in the background.
Oh, my TV. Yeah, it's my TV. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. My name
Please
is Diane Monroe, 14th Ward. I'm the chair of the 14th Ward Democratic Executive Committee, RCO. I thank you for allowing me to address this committee this morning. The 14th Ward RCO support Bill number 210468 to amend the Philadelphia zoning map by creating the GAO, Girard Avenue Overlay District. This amendment will not have an adverse effect on the immediate or surrounding community. As a matter of fact, it will strengthen the characteristics of the community. We are in total support, which is including the height. I wish to say thank you for introducing this bill, and I ask the committee for their full support and vote to pass bill as written 210468. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to testify on the bill whose name has not been called yet? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210469?
We have Paula Brumlow Burns.
Good morning, Chair Johnson and members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210469, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Parker for Council President Clark. Bill number 210469 amends Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by amending the NCP North Central Philadelphia Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. The proposed bill will add several small street segments to the boundaries of Area C, so the boundary will now close. The bill will also remove Sub-Area B, which enabled the construction of 2 privately owned and operated high-rise dorms by the Goldenberg Group and is no longer necessary in the code. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210469 at its meeting of June 10, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210470?
We have Paula Brumlow Burns.
Please state your name and proceed.
I am Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation at the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210470, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Parker for Council President Clark. Bill number 210470 amends Chapter 14-900 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Signs by providing for new sign controls entitled 1900 Market Street Digital Display Sign Regulations. It is identical to bill number 170282-A, which was signed by the mayor on June 6, 2017. These provisions were removed from the code in the 2020 Zoning Omnibus Bill, bill number 210075, since the sign subject to these provisions is built and in operation. The bill applies to the area on the south side of Market between 19th and 20th Streets and runs 65 feet along 19th and 20th Street south of Market Street. In 2017, the Planning Commission recommended provisos and does so again for bill number 210470. They are amend the name of the district to Market Street West of Digital Display Sign Regulations to be able to include other properties in the future, omit the locator map, which is unnecessary, with the detailed description provided in the text, remove the language regarding how luminosity of the sign will be measured. This is solely within license and inspections purview, and they need flexibility to allow them to adapt to future technologies. 4. Specify that the signs under this section require Art Commission approval. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210470 at its meeting of June 10, 2021, and recommended approval with amendments of the provisos as a matter in accord with previous policy. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Mr. Chair, you are muted.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210361?
We have Paula Brumlow Burns.
Paula, just can you state your name for the record and please begin?
I'm only going to do this 17 other times today, so I'm ready. I'm Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation at the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210361, which was introduced into City Council on April 22nd, 2021 by Councilmember Jones. Bill number, I'm sorry, are we on 210361? Yes. Okay. Sorry. I got confused myself. Bill number 210361 amends the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Section 14-504 entitled NCO, Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. The bill proposes to limit multifamily housing from single-family zoning districts for properties within the Overbrook Farms NCO. Neighborhood conservation districts only apply to properties that are not historically designated, and this area has recently been designated as historic. This bill is creating a limit that already exists within the zoning code. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210361 at its meeting of June 10, 2021, and did not recommend approval.
Will the sponsor of the bill for comments, Councilman Curtis Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should begin very briefly by apologizing to you, Darrell Clark, and Member Gutierrez. And the reason I say that is because I used to think gentrification and overdevelopment was your issue in South Philly or North Philly or Southwest Philly and not a 4th district issue. Well, I'm here to tell you, Mr. Chairman, such is not the case. Whether you talk about Overbrook Farms, where historic mansions were designed to be or recommended to be cut up into 20-unit condos without thought to the historic preservation aspect of it, nor the impact to parking and transportation. Or if you go to regular neighborhoods where row houses exist, where these cookie cutter, eccentric corner stores are popping up that sell things like drug paraphernalia, have illegal gambling. The series of zoning bills that I'm proposing today helps to preserve neighborhoods. Whether you're in Overbrook Farms or whether you're in Cal Park. And so I'd like my colleagues to take a look at it. I would say that in conversation with other members, there might be in the future a more comprehensive bill that might reach citywide, because this is not just a 4th district problem where these stores are popping up, but it's a North Philly, West Philly, South Philly, Northeast problem. And dare I say, not without being too stereotypical, that where these stores go, crime does follow. And we're beginning to map where that occurs, Mr. Chairman, where you have drug paraphernalia, you have folk hanging out, and some of them aren't doing the right thing. And so we want to monitor that. I remember when I first got elected, every by right zoning, all of the CDCs said, let's keep council people out of development. Here we are, full circle, and now they expect us to step up to the plate and to be champions for neighborhoods where by right does not allow. And so we are just responding to that cry, Mr. Chairman, and hope to be the vanguard for communities, whether you're talking about Overbrook Farms, Overbrook Park, or Carroll Park. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilman Jones, and as always, respect your leadership on the work you're doing on the ground for your constituents. Any other questions or comments from members of this panel or members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210445?
Paula Brumblow Burns.
Hi, and I just want to say I think that Council Member Jones, his last comments were actually about this bill. So I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to line it all.
For point of information, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to be able to not interrupt as many times, so I knew what was coming down the pike. So I kind of was comprehensive in my comments, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, just for the record, everything got lined up. I'm Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, proceed.
Okay, I'm Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210445, which was introduced by Councilmember Kiona Sanchez for Councilmember Jones on May 13th, 2021. Bill number 210445 extends the commercial restrictions of the Wynnefield Overlay, WYN, to the other sections of the 4th Council District to include the Allegheny West, Carroll Park, and Overbrook Park neighborhoods. The City Planning Commission unreservedly supports the efforts of City Council to reduce neighborhood impacts of tobacco and drug paraphernalia sales. However, the City Planning Commission believes that the rules proposed in this bill, while clearly well-intentioned, will cause some unintended harm. The bill would require most new community-serving businesses such as grocery stores, pharmacies, bakeries, butchers, electronic stores, hardware stores, and many others to retain an attorney and undergo an uncertain and lengthy hearing process in order to open their doors to do business. As the city and the nation recover from the pandemic, community business corridors are in need of support. The proposed bill adds significant cost, time, and unpredictability to the process of opening a business in the affected areas. The rules established by this proposed zoning regulation will impact similar businesses differently. For example, commercial corridors such as 63rd Street, Market Street, and Lehigh Avenue will have different rules on different sides of the street. Treating one side of the street differently from another side, or one commercial corridor with similar attributes differently from another, is problematic. The proposed uses are found in all neighborhood commercial corridors throughout the city. These uses sustain neighborhoods. Being able to easily access food stores, pharmacies, and hardware stores in one zone neighborhood is one of the primary reasons that many people choose to live in Philadelphia. The uses are rightly permitted as a matter of right in commercial zoning districts. Changing that represents a dramatic overreach in regulation of common commercial uses. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210445 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021, and did not recommend approval. I will be happy to answer questions at this time.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Jones.
In another life, before I joined this body, I used to run the Philadelphia Commercial Development Corporation, which was a commercial lending arm similar to PIDC, similar to the SBA. In fact, the corridors that were mentioned by the Planning Commission, I represented. And one of the differences between how the Planning Commission sees things and how District Council people see things is when you talk about the middle of that commercial corridor and on the other side of the street, on one side of the street, it is represented by President Darrell Clark. On my side of the street, I represent it. And I cannot go into another council person's district making recommendations no matter how I view the world. So these kinds of corrective actions, if we need to, can be done by the individual district council person. But in my part of that commercial corridor, I walk that strip often and understand what the proliferation of certain types of business can mean. It can mean a total sea change for whether or not people even want to shop at a certain time on that corridor. I've met with seniors, Mr. Chairman, who are captives in their house because of those types of small corner stores that attract that kind of attention. And it is my intention with this zoning to be more deliberate, to look at what type of electronic store is coming to a corridor or what type of convenience store, and so that more importantly, in my opinion, the neighbors have an opinion that is recognized and respected beyond by right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Paula, for your testimony. I just wanted to come on to thank my colleague, Councilmember Curtis Jones, and also my district council member, for his foresight and insight in extending these restrictions relative to neighborhood preservation, but also to the types of stores that are setting up along our commercial corridors. We do, as you stated, Paula, and I'm quoting, you said we need support on our corridors. We do need support, right? We need to increase scrutiny as well, because these stores are setting up and they are applying for licenses and permits from the city under certain pretenses, and then they're operating under others. So this bill would allow us to have that increased scrutiny to ensure that the neighbors have an opportunity to weigh in on the type of stores that are setting up on our corridors. And I also wanted to say, for the record, and I know we've been working on this and this is related to it, and the definition of drug paraphernalia in the code has finally been updated after 45 years as a result of the bill that this council passed and I introduced 210159. And now that the mayor has signed that bill, we'll be working closely with L&I on the enforcement mechanisms that we are going to take citywide, area by area, of course, working with the district council members. So I had a very quick question regarding the bill. What will this bill allow L&I to do that they cannot already do in terms of enforcement? Because that's the key. The enforcement is key.
Is that directed to planning or?
Yes, directed to planning or L&I. I just want to get them on the record for this question.
I believe that what this will do is, instead of let something such as, and because tobacco sales are not really under our control, but they're through state and where we can and what kind of uses we can put them in. So they're allowed in a food store. They're allowed to be sold in a restaurant. So what it is takes any use where a tobacco could be combined with another sale, and it requires those uses to go to the zoning board for a variance instead, or I'm sorry, excuse me, it was a special exception instead of getting a by right permit. So every restaurant, grocery store, pharmacy, convenience store will now need to go, instead of be a matter of right, will have to go to the zoning board for a special exception in these overlays.
And to your point, Paula, with that process, that would mean increased community involvement in the process. Is that correct?
It would. It does. Going to the zoning board does require a registered community organization meeting within 45 days of their application to the zoning board. But I will say the zoning board right now is scheduling out months and months in advance.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that confirmation. And again, thank you to my district colleague, my district council member and colleague, Council Member Curtis Jones Jr., for all of your work on these issues in our community. I just wanted to say, for the record, that Councilman Jones talked about, the anecdote of increased potential criminal activity around some of these corridors. And I just wanted to put on the record, particularly for the neighbors in Wynnefield, that we just had a shooting last week, 54th, right over about 54th and Morse, on our commercial corridor there. And we know that we've been working on this issue over the past couple of months in this council. So I just wanted to put that on the record as well for planning. But thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you again to Councilman Curtis Jones Jr. I'm in full support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Cindy Bass.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I wanted to, number one, I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Curtis Jones, for this really just game-changing legislation. This is, as you know, I've been working against nuisance businesses for a long time now, really since my inception in council, and it just never ends. And just yesterday, we did a tour in the 8th District with some members of the health department and the Department of Licenses and Inspections. And I was shocked and surprised that some of the things that were glaring, what I would consider violations and reasons for closure, were not reasons for closure. And even after we pass our nuisance business stop and go legislation in 2017, we are still unable to get the full effect of what was promised through a lack of understanding of what the bill should do, a lack of understanding of what the expectations for these businesses are. We were able to have 2 businesses cease operation on the strength that they were not operating with a sprinkler system. So we were able to get 2 of them to cease operation, but the continuation of these businesses, that's just a temporary thing. They're going to get it fixed. They're going to be back up in the business. And we don't want people to go out of business, but what we want is businesses that respect the community. We don't want businesses that create and continue and support addiction. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of our neighborhoods. So I just really wanted to offer kudos to you, Councilman Jones. I'm in full support, and I'm going to be looking for ways to do this in the 8th District as well. And the one last thing I will advise you of is, as of yesterday, as I mentioned, we did a tour. There was some confusion, it seemed, with the health department around the cigarette license. So it seemed as if, that's issued by the city of Philadelphia. So it seemed as if a retailer can apply, not have approval, but still, while the application is being processed, that they can actually sell these products. So just something else to be mindful of. And that's certainly on our radar yesterday as a result of this tour, and we're going to be following up. So thank you again, and I look forward to offering my full support for what you're doing here today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Is anyone else here to testify on this bill whose name has not been called? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210446?
We have Paula Brumlow Burns.
I'm Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on bill number 210446, which was introduced by Councilmember Kiona Sanchez for Councilmember Jones on May 13th, 2021. Bill number 210446 limits the dwelling unit density in residential single-family zoning districts, RSD, where the development includes the reuse of properties that have been listed on the Philadelphia Register of Historic Places. Presently, the zoning code permits CMX3 commercial mixed-use development standards to apply to properties that have been listed on the Philadelphia Register of Historic Places and have also been certified by the Historical Commission to have been previously used for a commercial or institutional purpose. The dwelling unit density permitted in the CMX3 zoning district is relatively high for areas zoned for single-family detached districts. This bill would reduce the permitted dwelling unit count for historic properties in the RSD districts by requiring a certain amount of lot area per dwelling unit. The lot area required per dwelling unit is half the minimum lot size for the underlying zoning district. An example of this is in the RSD2 district, where the minimum lot size is 7,800 square feet, and a residential unit may be placed in the existing structure for every 3,900 square feet of land. So, if a property is 25,000 square feet, the building would be allowed to have 6 units by right, whereas CMX3 had unlimited. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210446 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210471?
Paula Brumlow Burns.
Good morning. I am Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210471, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Jones. Bill number 210471 will authorize non-accessory parking on the premises located at 4422 to 24 Ridge Avenue Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, all under certain terms and conditions. This bill will allow the city to authorize the improvement and use of a parking lot at 4422 to 24 Ridge Avenue in East Falls. The parking lot will be public with 32 parking spaces for day users of Fairmount Park and will be available to the community for use in the evening. This is the first time that this process has been used where the zoning code allows any use expressly authorized by City Council ordinance to be permitted as of right on a property zoned special purpose parks and open space. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210471 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 and recommended approval. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210484?
Paula Brumblow Burns.
You on mute, Paula.
Three screens froze you off sometimes. I'm Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation at the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210484, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Bass. Bill number 210484 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain portions of land located within an area bounded by Broad Street, Erie Avenue, Hunting Park Avenue, Wissahickon Avenue, the Railroad Right-of-Way, Clarissa Street, Juniata Street, Germantown Avenue, Hunting Park Avenue, and Roosevelt Boulevard. The proposed bill will change the residential zoning districts from primarily RM1 residential multifamily to RSA 5 single-family residential. It will encourage residential multifamily on major commercial blocks, transit corridors, and in areas with large concentrations of vacant land by providing RM1 and IRMX industrial residential mixed use. It will also create a buffer between residential and industrial areas by changing I2 medium industrial to less intense I1 light industrial and ICMX industrial commercial mixed uses. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210484 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 and recommended its approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210449?
Paula Brumblow Burns.
Good morning. I am Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation at the City of Philadelphia Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210449, which was introduced into City Council on May 13th, 2021 by Councilmember Johnson. Bill number 210449 amends Title 14 of the Philadelphia Zoning Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising a table within Section 14-701 Dimensional Standards. The proposed bill will correct a typographical error that was in Bill number 210075 that reversed the open space and occupied area for the RMX3 residential mixed-use chart found in Table 14-701-2. The proposed change will return the occupied building area to 90% for buildings that are 5 stories and under, and 100% for all other uses. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210449 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee on this particular bill? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the first panel for Bill number 210473?
We have Paula Brumblow Burns, Nicole Kodecker, and Paul Steink. And you can testify in the order in which I called.
Paula, you want to begin?
Okay. Yes, I am Paula Brumbelow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on Bill number 210473, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Johnson. Bill number 210473 amends Chapter 14-1000 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Historic Preservation to establish a temporary demolition moratorium with respect to properties in the area of Christian Street between Broad and 20th Streets. The proposed bill will prohibit demolition of structures along Christian Street between Broad and 20th Streets, also known as Doctors Row, for a period of 12 months or until certification of a historic district by the Philadelphia Historical Commission, whichever comes first. The Planning Commission staff recommended amendments to specify that it applies to properties with frontage along Christian Street, that the term total demolition should be called complete demolition for consistency within the code, to specify the moratorium scope as to that it is to create a historic designation to the Philadelphia Register of Historic Places, and to clarify what final determination of a historical designation means. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210473 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021, and recommended approval with amendments. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Will the next witness proceed with their testimony?
Good afternoon, Chairperson Johnson, Vice Chairperson Squilla, and members of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Bill number 210473. My name is Nicole Kodiker, and I am the Executive Director for the South of South Neighborhood Association, one of the RCOs and civic associations in the Graduate Hospital area of Philadelphia. As a neighborhood resource, we regularly receive phone calls and emails from neighbors regarding missed trash pickups, questions about recycling bins, and plenty more. More recently, we've seen a surge in the number of concerned neighbors reaching out about building demolitions. Specific to this bill, when neighbors learned of a proposed demolition to the home next to Julian Abel's place of residence on 15th and Christian, there was confusion, frustration, and disappointment that this could happen without a moment of community input or consideration. While the focus has been on the block that Julian Abel resided, there have been a number of demolished properties that don't receive the same attention, but who's to say there isn't historical significance to those homes too? The Graduate Hospital neighborhood is home to many unrecognized and recognized African-American cultural and institutional legacies through the 19th century. In the last few decades, our neighborhood has seen a displacement of intergenerational African-American families influenced by a number of political decisions, policies, and systemic issues. Along with the displacement of families and the demolition of their homes and institutions, we lose their stories, influence, and culture that built the neighborhood we see today. South of South Neighborhood Association aims to preserve the historic resources that provide meaning to the neighborhood through policies, storytelling, and support programs. Our Preservation Action Plan outlines some ways that we can start these conversations with our neighbors about the past, present, and the future. At the beginning of this process, we reached out to Councilman Johnson's office and the Preservation Alliance to figure out what resources and tools exist to help us preserve more of our neighborhood's history, reduce the number of unnecessary demolitions, and keep neighbors in their homes. We spoke with neighborhood groups like Queen Village and Powelton Village about their historic district designations and neighborhood conservation overlays. We started indexing historic sites and institutions with the help of our neighbors, and we formed a preservation task force made up of new and old neighbors to execute this plan. With a better understanding of our options, we presented our action plan at our March general meeting with positive feedback and excitement. With a sense of optimism, our committee began to take action. In collaboration with the Preservation Alliance, we hired consultants to begin to archive and research Doctors Row residents from 1910 to 1940 between 15th and 20th Streets on Christians for a historic designation nomination. We were then contacted by Councilman Johnson's office and told that he expected to propose a bill for a temporary demolition moratorium on Christian Street, which brings us to the present. Row and allow time to research the people that lived on these blocks without the threat of demolition. Our action plan doesn't end here. We want to share the stories of rich African American cultures and traditions long ignored and forgotten by development and displacement through events and walking tours of our area. We hope that sharing the stories and legacy grows a renewed sense of love and compassion, a common ground for us to understand each other and learn from our past. We also want to support our neighbors and keep them in their homes. As one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in the Philadelphia area, our role as an RCO and civic association is to make sure everyone's needs are met. Our task force will be exploring a way to create a fund to assist with home repair costs for low-income residents of historic designated sites and identifying ways that we can incentivize equitable development that can increase affordable housing stock in our neighborhood. This bill today is just the first step in many to the much-needed preservation of African American places around Philadelphia. We thank Councilman Johnson for his leadership with this bill and continued support of our organization and neighbors. And of course, thank you to our neighbors, partners, and volunteers that are making this all happen. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Will the next panelist proceed?
Good morning, Rules Committee Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Squilla, and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Paul Steinke, Executive Director of the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. Thank you for the opportunity to express the Preservation Alliance's support for Bill 210473 for a temporary demolition moratorium on Christian Street in South Philadelphia. The Preservation Alliance is a member-supported nonprofit organization founded in 1996 to advocate for the preservation of Philadelphia's historic buildings, streetscapes, and neighborhoods. The Preservation Alliance, as Nicole just said, is preparing to submit a nomination to the Philadelphia Historical Commission, contending that the 1400 through 1900 blocks of Christian Street deserve protection as a Philadelphia Historic District under the provisions of the Philadelphia Historic Preservation Ordinance. The nomination contends that the Christian Street Historic District was a main street of Philadelphia's Black elite between the years 1910 and 1945, supporting the individual careers of notable Black professionals and the community building work of notable Black organizations. The 214 properties within the proposed historic district include individual row houses, row house pairs, 4-unit rows, corner stores once used for retail, former social and political club buildings, structures associated with Black churches, and a former post office that was led by Philadelphia's first Black postmaster. Individuals that will be recognized in the nomination include the Reverend Charles A. Tindley, the Reverend William A. Harrod, banker and politician Andrew F. Stevens, undertaker and politician William Almond, lawyer and politician John C. Asbury, architect Julian Abel, engineer Frederick Messiah, Dr. Walter Jarrick, Dr. Agnes Berry Montier, and Dr. Thomas Imes, among many others. Organizations recognized in the nomination include the First African Baptist Church, the Christian Street YMCA, Post Office Station D, Quaker City Elks Lodge number 270, along with Keystone Temple number 448, the Citizens Democratic Club, the 30th Ward Young Republican Club, and Jack and Jill of America. The period of significance for the proposed historic district stretches from 1870 to 1945, starting with the thoroughfare's initial development as a middle-class Irish community and its adaptation by middle-class African Americans starting around 1910. In that year, census records indicate the district was 24% Black, growing to 57% by 1920. But by 1930, the street's residents were 92% Black, heralding an era of Black accomplishment amid discriminatory laws and practices both here in Philadelphia and throughout the United States. We expect to be ready to submit the Historic District nomination, which stretches to more than 100 pages, to the Historical Commission by the end of this month. However, given the small size of the Historical Commission staff, we do not know how long it will take for them to process the nomination. We do know that there are a handful of pending Historic District nominations in the queue before this one. As an aside, I know you're currently working hard to finalize next year's operating budget, and this stands as further evidence of the need for a better resourced Historical Commission. I know you've been hearing from me on that for a while now. Thank you for listening. Under the Historic Preservation Ordinance, once the Commission deems a nomination complete and correct and sends notices to the affected property owners, the properties will then be protected from demolition and insensitive alteration until the Commission formally acts on the nomination. But since we don't know how long it will take for the Christian Street nomination to be processed, the moratorium on demolition under the proposed ordinance you are considering today is essential to prevent further loss of the historic fabric of Christian Street as detailed by Nicole. In closing, in recent years, the built environment along Christian Street has been under intense assault, suffering the loss of many historic houses and former institutional buildings for new construction. In this way, the fabric of Christian Street as Doctors Row, an avenue of the black elite during the Jim Crow era, could ultimately be lost forever. If this nomination is ultimately approved, Christian Street will become the first historic district in Philadelphia based primarily on black history. By voting to approve this proposed ordinance today, you can take an important step towards ensuring that Doctors Row will live on as a monument to outstanding black achievement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I have questions and comments from members of the committee. As the sponsor of the bill, just for me, I just want to thank Nicole and Sasha. I want to thank you, Paul. I want to most importantly thank also other neighborhood long-term residents who will speak on the next panel regarding the organizing around the preservation of African-American historical landmarks around Christian Street from 13th to 20th. And so with that being said, I'm going to acknowledge first Councilman Maria Conant Sanchez, then Councilman Jamie Gaudier, then Councilman Curtis Jones for their comments from the committee.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I'm trying to log on here to the computer. My apologies. Technical efficiencies. We need a little bit of TLC in our OIC, OIT component.
You're on.
Okay, is this on our bill? I'm sorry. I had a. Okay.
Yes, this is in regards to the demolition moratorium on Christian Street, on Christian Street.
Oh no, I don't have anything to comment on that. I thought we were at the beginning of our bill.
Council, on your bill. Okay, I'm sorry. Councilman Curtis Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to congratulate you on the foresight to introduce this historic overlay and just say there are two books that people should read. One of them is The Geography of Nowhere. And that is a book about planning where most cities in America are starting to look alike, starting to be designed alike. And they're removing any historical sense of place. And that if you spun somebody around 3 times blindfolded, took the blindfold off, it is hard for them to tell where they are. But when you preserve Doctors Row, you tend to make a statement as to Philadelphia's importance and Black Philadelphia's importance in history. So kudos for that. And then the second book is Roots of Violence in Black Philadelphia, 1860 to 1900, authored by Roger Lane. And what it talks about is that particular area, Mr. Chair, being called Little Africa. And the reason why Doctors Row's and other concentrations of minority and African-American businesses happened was because of segregation, because they couldn't go anywhere else. And so to preserve that history is to preserve its contribution to Philadelphia. I would also say is that when people come to visit Philadelphia in the future, whether it's medical societies or Black doctors, consortiums, national, when they come there, they're going to want to see how those doctors live. So kudos to you, sir, for preserving it and making sure that people remember and remember why it existed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Will the clerk please call the next panel?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes, this is Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson. I just had a very quick comment on your bill and just wanted to thank you very much for introducing the legislation. I wanted to thank all those who testified in favor of this legislation. Say hello to our friend Paul Stanky for all of your work on historic preservation, not only in South Philadelphia, but across the city of Philadelphia. I also wanted to mention, Councilmember Jones, one additional book that I just purchased called Up South, and it traces the efforts of 2 generations of Black Philadelphians to turn the city of brotherly love, and I say sisterly love, into a place of promise and opportunity for all. And I think that's important to understand the cultural heritage and significance of Black people in the city of Philadelphia. And I do believe we have to do a better job of preserving our culture here in the city. And I'll leave with this. I remember visiting the city of New Orleans in 2018 for a sorority convention. I believe they have done a great job in preserving their cultural significance and heritage in their community. We were able to visit Congo Park, the neighborhood where Homer Plessy is from. So those are the type of things that we have to think about here in the city of Philadelphia, how we preserve our cultural heritage and significance as we move forward in the era of all this construction and demolition that's happening in our city. So I simply wanted to say thank you for all of your work and for the importance of this legislation, and know that we have more work to do moving forward. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Will the clerk please call the next panel?
For panel number 2, we have Richard Gliniak and we have Linda Evans.
Please state your name for the record and begin.
Hi, my name is Richard Gliniak. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Rules Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to express my strong support for Bill 210473 and its temporary demolition moratorium. I'm a Democratic committee person, South of South Neighborhood Association zoning committee member, and a long-term 19146 homeowner. I am also a strong supporter of development without displacement that honors facades, front porches, and cornice lines. And as stated in a recent Inquirer article in which I am quoted, I am an activist and preservationist working with a coalition of neighbors to preserve and protect our historic homes and neighborhood from demolition and damage. A recent Inquirer article titled Racing Against Time to Save South Philadelphia's Black Main Street, where African-American greats once lived, such as the Reverend Charles Tindley, Marian Anderson's friend and architect Julian Abel, and PA Representative and lawyer John Asbury, documented the rapid rate of demolition on this historic Black Doctors Row between Broad and 20th on Christian Street. This demolition is both astonishing and frightening. Astonishing in that it is proceeding at a rate not seen before, or at least not in my 20 years living here in Graduate Hospital. Frightening because if you look at the Philadelphia Register of Historic Places map, where pink signifies protected areas, the Christian Street Black Doctors Row and most of Graduate Hospital are currently unprotected from demolition, unlike the large pink areas just north of Lombard Street. Bill 210473 and its one-year demolition moratorium and a future Christian Street Historic District would fix this horrifying situation. I strongly urge you to vote yes on Bill 210473. I support Bill 210473 because unless Council passes this critical piece of legislation, we will continue to lose African American historical places like the following ones we have already lost these roughly past 5 months. 1507 Christian Street, covered in another Inquirer article. 1513 Christian Street, once an 8-room boarding house and covered in another article titled Developers' Condos Would Destroy South Philadelphia's Famed Black Doctors Row. 1623 Christian Street, whose demolition has damaged adjacent 1621 and 1625 homes as it was being demolished with an axe, then while underpinning was taking place. It should be noted that these 3 properties, along with 7 other row homes on that same block, were renovated 24 years ago with city HUD funding to provide affordable home ownership. 1712 Christian Street, whose demolition, excavation, and underpinning caused 1714 Christian Street to be deemed imminently dangerous when the main partition wall began separating and threatening the historic John Asbury House at 1710 Christian Street, and 1941 Christian Street, once the location of the heavily used St. Charles Senior Center, and in the distant past, a historic Black Elks Lodge. And while passage of Bill 210473 would temporarily prevent further losses like these, I urge the planners and high-density theorists who think all this demolition is acceptable to walk our historic streets and talk as Councilman Johnson and I have with my Christian Street neighbors and friends, some pictured here. They should listen to the upsetting reality of the disruption, and displacement brought on by the demolition from these theoretical plans and theories. And please read Preserving African American Places, Growing Preservation's Potential as a Path for Equity, and see that it is not okay, as some have suggested on social media, that white historical buildings and communities get preserved like those above Lombard Street, while Black historical blocks like Doctors Row only get markers. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify in support of this bill, and thank you, Councilman Johnson, for sponsoring and introducing this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Will the next panelist please begin your testimony? You are on mute right at the moment.
Miss Evans, you are currently muted. If you could please unmute so we can hear you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not the best with this technology. Good morning to everyone. My name is Linda Evans, and I live in the 1600 block of Christian Street in the Dr. Rose community. I'm writing this letter in strong support for Bill 210473, which establishes a temporary demolition moratorium with respect to properties in the area of Christian Street between Broad and 20th Street. A few weeks ago, Councilman Johnson told me of the communications he had received from various constituencies when word had spread that he was introducing this legislation. Despite the external pressure from people and circumstances, Councilman Johnson, what you did was a good thing. In our private conversation, I said I had your back on this legislation, and I would publicly support you in this legislation. Proverbs 1:5 says, "A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel." Thank you, Councilman Johnson, for hearing the concerns of your constituents and wanting to increase your knowledge. You were born, raised, and educated in South Philadelphia. You know the families as well as the importance of the neighborhoods and the institutions. More importantly, your children and my great niece and nephew must understand the history of Doctors Row, the Christian Street YMCA, and other institutions in South Philadelphia. In 1998, I had moved to Doctors Row because of affordable housing opportunity, which at the time was offered by SALSNA. At the time, I was a doctoral student in education at Temple. I had qualified for the low to moderate income housing program, which was open to first-time home buyers. At that time, 10 of these homes were owned by first-time home buyers. The 10, we were all African Americans and 1 Latina. As a first-generation African American graduate student, I had the opportunity to live in this historic neighborhood, which consisted of First African Methodist Church, Tinley Temple, Marion Anderson Recreation Center. Also, I was a YMC board member, currently a member and a Democratic committee woman who has worked for more than 20 years with voter registration and election day activities. Presently, my neighbors and I are working very hard to make sure this South Philadelphia neighborhood remains intact for long-term homeowners. Why, you may ask? Our homes have been under attack by the demolitions of the adjacent buildings to my neighbor's property, resulting in damage. First at 1625 Christian Street, 1714 Christian Street, 1947 Christian Street, 2041 Fitzwater, 2043 Fitzwater, 932 South 18th Street. In short, there is no telling how many of my neighbors' homes have been damaged by the demolitions. Sadly, my neighbors have no legislation to protect their homes from damage due to the demolition or the new construction. As I have reflected what is happening, this historic African American community, I have learned that throughout the city, this is also occurring. Just yesterday, I was listening to some of my neighbors over at the East Park side, yes, in Councilman Jones's district, and they were talking about the demolition in East Park side. And then lately, I was also talking to a friend of mine who lives up in Mount Airy and West Oak Lane. She was also talking about the demolition occurring also up in East Oak Lane, well, West Oak Lane and Mount Airy. So yes, we're here talking about preserving Doctors Row and the historic institutions here in South Philadelphia. But what I've learned over the past few weeks that it is just not Doctors Row in South Philadelphia. Again, it's happening all over the city. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, even tonight, at 6 p.m., they're having a protest out there, Parkside, Belmont and Parkside protesting, okay? And I'm gonna go out there and join them to show my support. But in closing, I hope that this bill 21047 will be passed by this committee as well as the Philadelphia City Council. But though more importantly, I hope Philadelphia City Council will continue to protect the needs of their constituencies. As I am reminded, all of you are servant leaders. That's right, with the emphasis on servants. You are here to serve the constituency, to hear our concerns, and yes, to help the least among us in this society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Linda. I want to thank Richard. Similar to me thanking Paul and Nicole just for your advocacy, but specifically Linda and Richard, just for your advocacy around this issue, just for your advocacy for fighting and protecting your neighbors who live along Christian Street, and most importantly, just speaking truth to power on this issue. And so I want to acknowledge you for your hard work and your dedication around this very critical issue. And most importantly, as you mentioned, Linda, what we're addressing is indicative of what's taking place across the city of Philadelphia as a whole. And as I listened to my colleague, Curtis Jones, mentioned several books, as well as Kathleen Gilmore Richardson mentioned several books, brings to my mind a book by W.E.B. Du Bois called The Philadelphia Negro. And that specifically looks at the impact of African American culture, particularly in South Philadelphia / what we call now Center City, and how it was heavily populated African American community at one particular time. And so it's really important for us, if we're going to know our future, that we should know our past. And so I just want to thank all of you for your advocacy and your organizing efforts around this particular bill for the preservation of Black Doctors Row and other historical landmarks along Christian Street in South Philadelphia. At this time, do we have any other questions and comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, we will take a brief pause to allow members of the public who have registered for public comments on this particular bill to be called into this virtual meeting. We will now hear the testimony of those who have signed up for public comment. The clerk will call your name, and once called, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Samara Johnson.
How you doing, Samara? Just state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
I surely will. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Samara Johnson, and I live at 1625 Christian Street, Pennsylvania, for over 21 years. I am a victim of an ambitious developer's housing plan that resulted in damages to my property, and my property is in the middle of a demolition crew and developer's plan gone wrong. One side of my property, developers is building a 5-unit condominium building within a block of row houses. On the other side of my property, developers abandoned the property since 2017. The properties on Christian Street are row houses with rich African American history, known as Doctors Row. My father, as a youth, lived on the 1500 block of Christian Street. My father died from COVID-19 in 2020, and those memories he can no longer share with me. I am for amending Chapter 14, Chapter 14-1000 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Historic Preservation. I can guarantee there are other stories of property owners in the midst of demolition crew and construction crew nightmares. And that's my story.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And again, thank you for your courage in coming forward and telling your story. And most importantly, your perseverance. As a homeowner, I couldn't just imagine you having to address the issue that you have to address as relates to the impact of the development that is taking place and adjacent to your home. And so continue to keep fighting the good fight. And I thank you for your time and your advocacy and your testimony here today.
Thank you, and I thank you for your help, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, and support.
You're welcome, Ms. Johnson. Is there anyone else here to testify on the bill whose name has not been called? Okay, hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210482?
We have Paula Brumlow Burns.
I'm Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210482, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Squilla. Bill number 210482 amends Chapter 14-500 of the Philadelphia Zoning Code entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by creating a new section entitled HHC Heliport Hazard Control Overlay District and making related changes all under certain terms and conditions. The proposed bill creates a standalone thematic overlay that, when applied to specific heliports, will create building height requirements for areas that are in the helicopter approach paths. The first heliport to be identified is the Jefferson Hospital Heliport, located on the northeast corner of 11th and Walnut Streets. This will benefit the city by securing safe approaches for emergency helicopter service and will allow Philadelphia to continue providing state-of-the-art trauma care. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210482 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021, and recommended approval with amendments. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the next panelist?
That is actually it for this panel.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for Bill number 210483?
We have Paula Brumblow-Burns.
I am Paula Brumblow-Burns, Director of Legislation at the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210483, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Squilla. Bill number 210483 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Allegheny Avenue, Collins Street, Westmoreland Street, and Tulip Street, all under certain terms and conditions. The proposed bill will change the zoning for 2201 East Allegheny Avenue from CMX3 commercial mixed use to ICMX medium industrial. Industrial commercial. This property, which is across Tulip Street from the former Northeast Hospital site, was previously zoned G2 General Industrial in the old code. The site has a history of industrial use and was designated for commercial zoning, but the development was never built. The property is within the Port Richmond Industrial Development Enterprise Pride area and is adjacent to an active freight rail line as well as existing industrial operations within industrially zoned properties. The former Northeast Hospital site is the only other property in the proximate area zoned CMX3. Accordingly, the proposed remapping complements the zoning of surrounding land uses. The City Planning Commission at its meeting of June 10th, 2021 recommended Bill number 210483 for approval. I'll be happy to answer questions at this time.
Mr. Chair, you are on mute.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210479?
And real fast before we move on, I just want to make an announcement to any participants that are not currently testifying on a panel or are not council members, please mute your audio and video. Thank you. And for Bill number 210479, we have Paula Brumblow-Burns.
Hi, I'm Paula Brumblow-Burns, Director of Legislation at the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210479, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th by Councilman Gautier. Bill number 210479 amends the master plan for the University of Pennsylvania by areas of land located within an area bounded by Chestnut Street, 33rd Street, Ludlow Street, and 34th Street. The proposed bill will enable the University of Pennsylvania to amend their master plan to accommodate construction of a proposed 6-story building. The proposed School of Engineering and Applied Sciences Data Science Building will consist of classrooms, labs, and offices to support the university's data science program. The construction will increase the occupied area and the gross floor area of the master plan district by 19,502 square feet and 115,954 square feet, respectively. With this proposal considered, the University of Pennsylvania remains within their allowable occupied area, 70% of total area allowed, and gross floor area, 400 FAR allowed, for the special purpose institutional SPINS zoned district. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210479 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021, and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for Bill number 210480?
We have Paula Brumblow-Burns.
I am Paula Brumblow-Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210480, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Gautier. Bill number 210480 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Civic Center Boulevard, University Avenue, Spruce Street, and 34th Street. The proposed bill was requested by the parcel owner, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP, and proposes to change the base zoning of some parcels of land surrounding and including Osler Circle to CMX5, Center City Commercial Mixed Use, from CMX3, Commercial Mixed Use, and RM4, Residential Multifamily. CHOP requested this remapping bill as part of their plans for future development in additions to their site. This proposed remapping meets the recommendations of the comprehensive plan as well as specific University Southwest District Plan zoning recommendations. The USW plan recommends for these parcels of land to be remapped to CMX5. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210480 at its meeting of June 10th, 2021, and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The chair acknowledges Councilman Captain Gilmore Richardson, who I think has a question for Bill number 210479.
Yes, I apologize, Mr. Chair. My computer was freezing, but I had a very quick question regarding 210479. I was reading through the EOP, and on page 2 of the EOP for the new data science building, the university states an intention to reach a target of 25% of the workforce of apprentices and journeymen being local residents, and have a target of 50% of apprentices being minority. So I just wanted to drill down on that for a bit and ask the university how they are intending to monitor these targets to determine if the targets will be met, and what organizations will the university partner with to recruit minority apprentices. And also, are you partnering with the School District of Philadelphia to have CTE students in the apprenticeship program?
Is the sponsor of the bill available for comment?
I'm here. I don't have the EOP in front of me. I would have to get it and follow up with the council member. But I'm happy to do that. I'll also say with this bill, I'll also say that in conjunction with this project, there's a very strong community benefits agreement, and where the university will invest a portion of a percentage of the construction cost into projects that the community decides. So I'm happy to follow up on both of those issues if you allow me a few minutes.
Surely. Thank you, colleague. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And just, Councilwoman Gaudier, we just circulated the EOP as well.
Oh, you did? Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
Oh, and also Penn, I'm hearing someone from Penn is on the line too, or should be.
Okay. Can a representative from Penn please respond?
I believe if he is still on, it would be Chris Kern.
Chris Kern, are you available? Okay,
we'll follow up. I'll make sure those questions are answered.
Yep. Okay, any questions or comments for bill number 2? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bobby Enan. I just glanced quickly at the EOP plan that was just circulated, and it does state in there that there are labor commitments for Philadelphia workforce diversity goals, working close with the trades, and the EOP plan for its success and to maximize apprenticeship opportunities with individuals that closely align with the city of Philadelphia's goals and policies. I just wanted to state that for the record, and I'm sure there'll be good opportunity for the sponsor of the bill, council and colleague, council member Gautier and Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson to walk that through and talk it out with CHOP and Penn. So I just wanted to bring that up for the record. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. To the bill in front of us, bill number 210480. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call panel for bill number 210467?
We have Paula Brumblow Burns.
May I have just a moment while I had a wrong bill opened up. All right. I am Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210467, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Councilmember Parker on behalf of Council President Clark. Bill number 210467 will amend the zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Cecil B. Moore Avenue, 20th Street, Oxford Street, and 21st Street. The proposed bill, seen by the Planning Commission, rezones portions of 3 residential blocks from RSA 5 residential single family and RM1 residential multifamily to RMX3 residential mixed use and ICMX industrial commercial mixed use. This purpose was to allow the Philadelphia Housing Authority to build an apartment building on Cecil B. Moore Avenue and a warehouse, outdoor storage, and accessory parking on Turner and Nicholas Streets. Introducing a new warehouse into residential blocks with no history of industrial use could generate truck traffic noise and pollution detrimental to resident safety and health. There are other suitable locations where PHA could build this facility by right in North Philadelphia, several of which staff have identified as owned by either the city, the Redevelopment Authority, or Amtrak. All are in industrial districts where residents would expect a warehouse to be built. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210467 at its meeting of June 10, 2021, and did not recommend for approval. This morning, staff reviewed an amendment that would rezone these portions all to ICMX. Since ICMX was the portion of the bill that was objectionable to the Planning Commission, it is staff opinion that this revision would not change our recommendation. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? If not, we will take a brief pause for tech support to allow public comment.
Mr. Chair, it's actually for the next bill, so we can actually have Paula, if she is prepared, testify for the last bill, and then after her testimony, there will be about a couple minute pause.
Let's rock and roll. Will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210474?
We have Paula Brumblow Burns.
And lastly for today, I am Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210474, which was introduced into City Council on May 20th, 2021 by Council members Canas, Sanchez, and Gautier. Bill number 210474 amends Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Section 14-702 entitled Floor Area, Height, and Housing Unit Density Bonuses. The bill makes adjustments to the mixed income housing bonus with an overall goal of creating new incentives that will allow more on-site construction of units, but will minimize the impact of extra density in lower density areas. For projects with 9 or fewer units, the bill would limit the availability of mixed income housing bonuses to only those that provide on-site affordable housing. For projects of any size, the availability of height bonuses will be limited to those that provide on-site affordable units. The method for calculating in-lieu payments would also be changed, with the overall impact of significantly raising these fees. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210474 at its meeting of June 10, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The chair recognizes the sponsors of the bill, Councilwoman Maria Corona Sanchez and Councilwoman Jamie Gaudier.
Is Councilmember Sanchez still on, or?
I don't see her, but I'm going to text her and see what's going on.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the, good morning still, members of the committee. Just before we get on this bill, I wanted to put this bill in a little bit of a historical context. As all of you know, as the author of the original mixed income mandatory conversation that we had many years ago, we had settled on this voluntary program, and I'm going to keep saying voluntary program because essentially what we've done is created an opportunity for the private market to work with city government to help us generate affordable units, or when not able to generate affordable units, that they would pay into the housing trust fund. As members will see in the report that was circulated, the 2020 mixed income housing bonus report, we have been able to successfully generate some money, but we have not been able to get as many units as we'd like. This conversation is part of a broader conversation about expanding the mandatory requirements, some which I have in my district and others which other council members have spoken about. What we did is we worked with the administration because I think there's a recognition, and a recognition particularly by the private sector, that the bonus amounts are too low. And because people are not using building the units, the amount of contribution does not actually generate enough money for us to create those units. So here we're trying to thread the needle between the availability of money for the housing trust fund, the availability of real money to create the products, but more importantly, to actually try to meet the goal, which is diverse mixed income housing, and get folks to build the units on site. Additionally, because of the feedback by many of the colleagues, and in fact this morning we've been talking about overlays to limit density as a result of some of the community concerns, we also try to thread the needle a little bit around the projects that we believe are causing the most impact in neighborhoods and areas of concern. So is it a perfect bill? No, the mandatory one would have been the perfect bill. We're not there. This is a voluntary program. I'm going to keep saying that, a voluntary program. You don't want the bonus. You don't have to abide by the rules here. So we really are trying to thread the needle around high impact development in certain zones, requiring mandatory on-site building, particularly in neighborhoods where many of the residents have expressed a concern because people have made the payment in lieu and not build the units, which again expressly goes against the spirit of the bill, which is diverse mixed income community development. And so, as you will hear from the Planning Commission, as part of their testimony, we really are trying to respond to a lot of things. Again, because this is a voluntary program, we believe that folks, can at least understand that this is one of the few programs that have been created where you actually get something for something. Most of the future conversations will not be in this spirit because, as you know, we are all facing an affordable housing crisis. We appreciate the work of the private industry who've worked with us in this, in the application of this. In South Kensington, in one of my neighborhoods, we have been able to obtain 10% affordable units on site on a voluntary basis by many developers who understand that it is in their best interest, particularly if you're an asset builder, not someone who's flipping properties. It's in their best interest to help us create those affordable units on site. One of the other issues that you'll hear some concerns and consternation about is the long-term affordability requirement of 50 years. The state PFFA has gone to 40 years, and there's, again, a growing concern that the affordability time be longer, as opposed to, where we started with LIHTC deals at 15 and 20. So everyone's moving in this direction. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to allow an opportunity for my colleague in this, Council Member Gautier, to speak a little bit around this. We all are confronting some development pressures, and I think we have to listen, read the room. We have to listen to the concerns expressed by district council members around these development pressures in their neighborhood. And we believe this lands us in a place where we can get more money into the Housing Trust Fund and hopefully more units. Like everything else, when these bills are rolled out, some are successful, some are not as successful. And this legislative body should always be willing to refresh and update the toolboxes that we create in this process. This is one of the best public-private partnerships we've created. I have all the faith that we will find the way to get to a place where we can respond to residents and some of the pressures around high impact development that's going on. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to the conversation from all of my colleagues and the questions and concern. And I'll allow my colleague, Council Member Gautier, to add on to that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilman Jamie Gautier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Quinones Sanchez. I wanted to start first and foremost by commending Councilmember Quinones Sanchez for carrying out this vision and for the years of work that it took to make this addition to our city code. She introduced this legislation, or this program rather, in 2018 as a way to protect residents from displacement. And we've seen a lot of successes through the program. But now that we've also seen it play out over a couple of years, we also see that there are aspects that are not optimal when it comes to maintaining affordability in our communities. And knowing what we know and seeing what we've seen play out over the past few years, we think it's time to make these tweaks. And when it comes down to it, the thing that's most important to us is getting more affordable units constructed. And right now, the way that the program is being used, we're not fully achieving that. Since the changes first went into place in 2018, we've gotten 22 affordable units committed for about 600 units of market rate housing, and millions of dollars from developers that people think is going to the trust fund, but it's not actually. And so this puts the burden of larger developments on our neighborhoods without, a full benefit to the community. And what we've seen in many neighborhoods like East Parkside and like Mantua and other neighborhoods across the 3rd District is that developers are using the program as a buyout instead of its intended purpose, which is to secure long-term affordable units in neighborhoods that are changing. So that's what we're trying to remedy and fix with this bill. And in the weeks and months to come, Councilmember Quinones Sanchez and I look forward to continuing these conversations about inclusionary zoning and mixed income housing, which are only becoming more urgent as time, goes along. And I think I speak for both of us when I say that keeping our neighborhoods affordable for the individuals and families who have lived there for generations is our #1 priority. And we look forward to sharing more and to doing more on that issue very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank both of you for your leadership on this issue. Any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Oh, Mr. Chair, sorry. Can I make one more thing. I wanted to
Absolutely.
respond to Councilmember Gilmore Richardson's questions from earlier on 279. So the council member was asking how the EOP would be sort of monitored. UPenn has an economic inclusion committee that includes representatives from the public and private sector and from our West Philly community. It meets quarterly to monitor the achievement of the EOP goals, and also Urban Affairs Coalition is the EOP consultant that will aggregate and track the data. And I know the council member also, inquired about ways that we're connecting with the school district to get students connected to these opportunities. And I'm not aware of a formal partnership with the school district, but I think that's a great idea and a great point, and I'm happy to have that conversation with Penn and with the council member as well. So thank you, and happy to follow up on any additional questions.
Thank you, colleague.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from other members of the committee? Hearing none, at this time, the committee will take a brief pause to allow members of the committee, members of the public who have registered for public comment on this particular bill to be called into this virtual meeting. We will take a moment and take a pause and let council support call all of the individuals for public comment.
Mr. Chair, we are now live again.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call on the first panel to testify?
The first individual we have for public comment for Bill 210474 is David Feldman. You may
David, just state your name for the record and begin.
Good morning, Chairman Johnson, Councilmember Sanchez, Councilmember Gautier, and members of Council's Committee on the Rules. Thank you for your opportunity for the Development Workshop to testify on Bill 210474. My name is David Feldman, and I serve as the Executive Director of the workshop. I've submitted written testimony and a graphic to explain some of it, so I will sort of abridge some of my testimony in the interest of time. The Development Workshop supports the sponsor's goals of increasing the Housing Trust Fund and growing the affordable housing stock in Philadelphia. Given the scope of cost-burdened renters and homeowners, funding needs to be provided on a broader basis than adding multiple taxes and fees to new units as they are added to the housing market. We also need new units at all levels, and discouraging rather than encouraging new housing units is counterproductive. While the workshop supports increased funding in new affordable units, we have concerns about the timing, the market impact, and the implementation of this particular ordinance on Philadelphia economy and the real estate market as it applies to the medium and larger multifamily developments affected by this bill that fill a gap that Philadelphia has compared with its peer cities. Projects today have already been facing increased building material costs due to COVID-related supply chain and inflation. And by tripling the cost of the payment into the Housing Trust Fund, the workshop believes this legislation will have a cooling effect on the creation of new multifamily housing that young and retired Philadelphians want today. One example of a more appropriate and reliable funding source is, for instance, the dedicated revenue proposed by Councilmember Green that will be voted on by Council later this week. In Philadelphia, the graphic I submitted will show, only 10% of our housing stock is multifamily buildings with 20 or more units. By comparison, Chicago, which has been looked at for this bill as an example, has 25% of its housing stock in these larger multifamily buildings. That's 2.5 times what we have in Philadelphia available as a housing option. Seattle, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. have 30% of their housing stock in this building type. This type is popular with young professionals and empty nesters, so the pipeline of these new buildings is what has been attracting more residents to choose to live inside Philadelphia rather than in nearby transit-oriented suburban locations. Unless Philadelphia produces more of this housing, especially for wage tax paying young professionals, we run the risk of losing these individuals and their mobile tax dollars, especially their wage tax dollars, to the suburban amenity-rich buildings that are going up by the hundreds and thousands in Lower Merion, Conshohocken, the town center of King of Prussia, and other nearby neighborhoods. This would have a significant impact on our city's budget, particularly the wage tax, the real estate tax, and business taxes, as employers tend to locate near their employees. Furthermore, if this legislation is enacted, the Development Workshop proposes that the effective date of the ordinance be amended to better align with the implementation of the 1% construction tax that was recently imposed and the reduction of the commercial and residential tax abatements, which have added a cost recently. For projects with 10 or fewer units, we propose that the effective date be January 1st, 2022 to align with those. And for larger projects, because they have a longer pre-development timeline, we propose an effective date of January 1st, 2023. The revised dates will allow projects that are already in the pipeline to complete the city's lengthy prescribed application processes as laid out in the Mixed Income Housing Bonus Report of 2019, to complete the process for projects that are already in the pipeline before this new major change to their calculations takes effect. We thank the sponsors and the committee for the opportunity to testify today and are available to answer any questions. We also, last Mohammed, we also would request that because of the complexity of this bill, that this bill in fact be held until the fall so that we have time to meet with the affected council members over the summer and get more understanding of the housing markets and the impact it would have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next person to make public comment?
We have Richard Gleniak.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Rules Committee. I actually was concentrating on Bill 210473, which I was just a part of on that panel. So I don't have a formal written statement, but I would like to make note that all of the properties on Kristen Street that are currently being demoed that we referenced during testimony for that bill, they were all mixed income housing bonus situations. So, I mean, as far as we are concerned, the mixed income housing bonus has not worked as it should been intended. No affordable units are being provided. Instead, on one particular or all of the row houses, we're going to get 5 luxurious condos. per row house. So, I support Bill 210474. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next person for public comment?
Rusty.
Good morning, Chairman Johnson and City Council members. My name is Mo Rushdie, and I serve as treasurer of the Building Industry Association of Philadelphia, as well as co-chair for its Affordable Housing and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I want to thank Chairman Johnson and the Rules Committee for allowing me to provide testimony today regarding Bill number 210474. The BIA is a trade association of mostly residential developers working throughout Philadelphia, along with the professionals who provide them with products and services. Most of our developer members build townhome developments that can range from single infills to 100-unit plus developments. Some renovate a few modest row homes a year, a few build glass towers filled with luxury apartments and condos, while still others are building low-income housing in neighborhoods where no one else is. There is an urgent need in Philadelphia for affordable housing options for a great many people. The city's Housing for Equity plan cites a need for 30,000 new or preserved affordable units by 2028. The BIA believes it is time to collaboratively craft policies that help all residents in the city share in its prosperity. That is why we worked with City Council Member Sanchez and Council President Clark in 2018 to create the mixed income housing legislation. And we have been working with them since to ensure that the program is bringing in both funds and units. Trading more density for more affordability made sense then and it makes sense now. We understand that Council now wants to put a greater emphasis on the delivery of affordable units on site over payments into the Housing Trust Fund. We agree and support strategies to increase the number of affordable units being built, but the math must work. The bill will have the opposite effects. By decreasing the incentives and increasing the requirements as proposed, the bill's numbers will discourage participation in the program, which means less units and less dedicated affordable housing funds as well. Another critical issue besides the math is that the on-site option requires a 50-year deed restriction. We understand why the sponsors are critical of shorter restrictions. But the fact remains that banks are overwhelmingly unwilling to underwrite projects with such a long restriction, and we suggest 20 years as an alternative. The language as currently proposed will preclude the private sector from providing the affordable units on site, and the program will not be utilized. Finally, as co-chair of the BIA's Affordable Housing Committee, I wish to remind City Council that through our blueprint for attainable housing, the BIA has over the last year presented a comprehensive strategy for private sector affordable housing development, including several ideas that, if implemented, would significantly increase the number of affordable housing units, and we will continue to advocate our proposals for adoption. The BIA is sincere in its desire to be part of the solution, and we believe in solutions that work for all. But as currently written, Bill number 210474 does not work for anyone and will not result in more affordable units or more Housing Trust Fund money. We strongly oppose the bill in its current form and ask that the legislation be held so that we can work over the summer with the sponsors to draft amendments that will achieve City Council's goals. Together, we can find a solution. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next person to provide public comment?
Next, we have Michael Cunningham.
Good morning, Council. My name is Michael Cunningham. I'm an active member of the City of Philadelphia Civic Life. I'm also a volunteer with this group. I'm testifying today on behalf of both myself and as a volunteer with this group. It is our belief that this group strongly supports policies to increase the amount of affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia. It is our belief that any proposed policy regarding real estate development take into consideration the economic impact of such policy on new projects. If City Council's goal is to make the on-site housing option more appealing for developers, there's a straightforward way to do that, by making the density bonuses more powerful for on-site housing. Creating these additional development rights is free for the city to do. Unfortunately, Bill 210474 would effectively reduce density allowances instead. In particular, the proposed reduction in the CMX 2.5 height bonus in the bill is it's a sign that City Council is putting aesthetic issues like building heights ahead of the more important goal of creating more total affordable housing in our city and making such projects more economically feasible. The difference between 65 feet and 55 feet high is not very detectable from the street level, and this isn't important enough that we should choose to have less housing over the height limit in particular. The removal of the height bonus without the removal of the density bonus could also be expected to push in the direction of more smaller units that aren't big enough for families. We don't have to choose between having enough housing and having enough family-sized units, because there can be plenty of spaces for both if we are willing to rank the aesthetic issues somehow with 4- and 5-story buildings lower on our list of priorities. We further recommend and request that an economic analysis be conducted on the proposed program's impact on city revenues prior to its implementation, and in particular the impact on revenues for the Housing Trust Fund. I will conclude with my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege, and I'm going to acknowledge Councilman David L. for comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I have a prior engagement that I'm committed to, so I would like to leave, but I'd like to be recording as voting aye on all bills.
Thank you very much, Councilman L.
Thank you, Chairman.
Would a clerk please call the next person for public comment?
Next, we have Benjamin Shee.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Shee. I'm part of the Fifth Square Housing Advocacy Group. Good morning, Council. Good morning, Chair, and morning Rules Committee. I deeply respect the work that Councilmember Gaultier and Quinones Sanchez are doing to support affordable housing and to create a bill that hopefully addresses some of these concerns. However, the details of the bill, I feel, are not as fleshed out as they need to be. And I believe that some unintended consequences of this bill could easily disrupt the housing pipeline that this city and also affordable housing relies upon to create both more affordable units and contribution to the sorely vital Housing Trust Fund. I want to focus on a few aspects of the bill today. First, I can start with the clause about developments that seek variances for elimination of required non-residential space would somehow not be eligible for the mixed income housing bonus. I believe, it was explained at the Planning Commission meeting last week that it was intended as a preemption against already approved projects or even built projects that would go to the zoning board to eliminate basically the commercial space already built for more units. But if the ZBA is going to be held under this clause, then the more likely scenario is that the developer would, basically eliminate all mixed income units while forfeiting the bonus if it's not built, making this clause entirely counterproductive. Also, this bill seems to also penalize developers who, through some awkward, lot dimension, could only provide 19% space instead of 20% required open space, for example. If this happens, then the entire pretense of an affordable housing bonus and program for the developer and for the city is taken away altogether. And so, really, I think a lot of these rules, while well-intentioned, do stand to risk basically disrupting the pipeline and participation into this program altogether. Additionally, one major goal of the bill explained last week as well was to obviously increase and maximize production of on-site affordable units, creating as much as possible. Because of this, it is rather perplexing why the bill will only require developers building 9 units and under to essentially require affordability in order to pay in lieu into the Housing Trust Fund. According to the current, mandatory, according to the current on-site affordability requirements, the 10% threshold basically means that these developers will only have to include one unit. Basically they include one unit into each building. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, the margins that small developers have compared to much larger developers makes this seemingly pretty impossible to work with. Meanwhile, it's a rather inefficient way, I would think, of doing affordable housing production as compared to the much larger developments, developments of 1,000 units and above in Broad and Washington and also in Fishtown. When we talk about requiring more affordable units in order to pay into the Housing Trust Fund, then I would think that it would be these developers that should be targeted first and not the smaller ones. And so potentially reversing this under 10 unit clause to something above 50 units and above, which is the trigger for civic design review, I think would be much better. And lastly, I just want to defend one more time the Housing Trust Fund and say that the contributions that developers make to it actually do go 100% into the Housing Trust Fund. And this program has been exceptionally well designed and targeted at programs all over city council districts and the city of Philadelphia for vulnerable homeowners and renters that need assistance the most. I strongly advocate putting this bill into the fall so that the council members can work with housing advocates and policy experts working on the ground to make this bill as successful as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak on public comment for this particular bill?
Councilmember, there is one more person for public comment. We have John Geeting.
John, please state your name for the record and begin your public comment.
This is John Geeting.
You can begin, John.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thanks so much for hearing my testimony and for your work on this bill. My name is John Geeting. I'm a civic activist and neighbor in Fishtown, and I've been following the twists and turns with the mixed income housing program since it was created back in 2018, or should I say expanded back in 2018. And I think, there are some key parts that I think are important to retain when making any changes to this bill. I think the program's popularity as a tool for making smaller missing middle projects feasible is a really important part of it that I would not want to see lost in any changes, whether that's generating additional housing or funding for the Housing Trust Fund. I think the popularity of the program is a testament to its success. I mean, there are any number of, kind of economic development programs or tax credits or things that, city councils passed over the years that haven't gotten as much uptake. But this one has seen a lot of use based on the report that came out from the Planning Commission about it yesterday. It's pretty popular, and it's generated a lot more money than city council had originally thought that it would for the Housing Trust Fund. And so I would not want to see, changes to it that make it less usable than it currently is. And one of the things I wanted to focus on was the provision banning projects under 10 units in the smaller zoning categories from utilizing the in lieu fee option while leaving the in lieu fee option in place for larger projects. I think that puts at risk the most popular part of the mixed income housing program. So according to the report that came out yesterday from the Planning Commission on the program, about half of all the development projects utilizing it to date have been in zone RM1 for small apartment buildings, and about another third have been in zone CMX2. And those are the two of the categories that the bill would ban from using the in lieu fee option. But what the Planning Commission found was that while a few very large projects accounted for like an outsized share of the anticipated payments into the Housing Trust Fund under the program, a majority of the money that's anticipated still came from some of these smaller categories, from RM1 20%, CMX2, 16%, CMX 2.5, 5%, and CMX3, 19%. So I just think it would be a mistake for the city to forfeit this revenue stream, especially without any analysis of its impact on the Housing Trust Fund. It would, I know sometimes City Council will request fiscal impact statements. I think that would be prudent in this case because we're talking about a lot of money that could go a long way dedicated to, basic systems repair and weatherization and all these great things that the Housing Trust Fund funds. And just as a general principle, I think, these smaller apartment projects actually need a lot more flexibility than the larger ones in the program, not less. But unfortunately, the proposed changes would subject the smaller projects to a much higher standard of regulation. And this is the opposite of the approach that City Council had called for in the Poverty Action Plan that was released a few years ago, which called for the mixed income housing program's expansion to cover new zoning districts, geographic overlays, and federally designated qualified opportunity zones. So the option exists to make the program more powerful with better density bonuses for on-site if the aim is to create more of the on-site units. But unfortunately, I think the bill as written seems unlikely to result in either more housing or more tax money and should be held pending additional feasibility analysis and amendments. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening to my thoughts. And thank you for having me today.
All right, you're welcome. Any other people for public comment? Is Jahali available for comment?
They were unable to reach him, Mr. Chair.
You're on mute.
Okay, thank you. If there's no one else here for public comment, before we go into our public meeting, I want to take a short recess. Let's take a 10-minute recess. Matter of fact, let's get back together at 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Mr. Chair, you are on mute.
Thank you very much. This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bills before this committee today. We will now convene the public meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. The clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Good morning, good day, whatever time it is, present.
Councilmember Cindy Bass. Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say for the record, member Mark Squilla's wife is a saint.
I knew that.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I'm present. And Councilmember Jones, I concur.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Present.
Councilmember Bobby Heenan.
I am present, Mr. Chairman.
And Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Present.
And also in attendance, we have Councilmember Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you. We will now go into our public meeting. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210468.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer amendment to bill number 210361. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210361 be approved.
Second.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are actually, the first bill is 210468.
368?
468 was called out.
Your bill number 210468.
Can we go 1 second, council member?
Yeah, we can take a brief moment.
Yeah, let's take a brief moment for a second. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Give me 1 second.
All right, I want to move the bill number 210468 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended and submit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair recognizes that Chair recognizes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 1 second. Excuse me, 1 second.
Hello.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210469.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210469 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be submitted to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210469 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next section of council. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion's carried. I want to go back to bill number 210468. Is that okay, Councilman Mark Squilla?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, want to do that one over just for the record. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210468.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the bill number 210468 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210468 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, this is Councilwoman Bass. I want to be marked as present and voting aye on any bills or resolutions I may have missed today.
Absolutely. The chair recognizes Councilman Cindy Bass as present. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210470.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210470 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210470 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210361.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for an amendment to bill number 210361. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move the amendment to the bill number 210361 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210361 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the amendment to bill number 210361 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210361 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210361 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210361 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210445.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210445 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210445 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210446.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 410466 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of the council. Is there a second?
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Bobby Heenan seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210446 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210471.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210471 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210471 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210484.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210484 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Jones seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210484 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210449.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210449 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading at the next council session.
Second.
The chair recognizes Councilman Jones for a second on the motion. The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210449 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on amendment to bill number 210473.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 210473. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210473 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210473 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. An amendment to bill number 210473 have been approved. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210473 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210473 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210473 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210482.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210482 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next council session.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210482 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210483.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 210483. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210483 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210483 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I hear y'all. Aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. An amendment to bill number 210483 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210483 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210483 as amended be reported to this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210483 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210479.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the amendment to bill number 210479. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210479 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210479 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the amendment to bill number 210479 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210479 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the bill number 210479 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210479 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210480.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210480 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of the council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion. Has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210480 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210467.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer amendment to bill number 210467. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210467 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Curtis Jones seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210467 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries and the amendment to bill number 210467 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a motion on bill number 210467 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210467 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210467 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. At this moment, before I recognize Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 210474, I would like to acknowledge Councilman Bobby Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I want to commend the sponsor of this bill, our colleague Marie Quinona Sanchez, for sticking with the issue of affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, and bonus densities in our neighborhoods. It's not as simple as people think. It's very complicated, and zoning issues can have a serious impact on people's lives in a negative way and in a positive way. There's unintended consequences. It has impacts on our neighborhoods. That's why I love the zoning committee so much. It seriously impacts who we are as a city and reflects how we care about our neighborhoods and our residents. And Marie Quinona Sanchez has always been out front with paying attention in such a smart way to all the neighborhoods in the city. So I want to thank her for that. For me, I will be voting aye and approving and supporting this out of committee, but reserving the right to look into this a little more detail before final vote. Because I want to check out the impact of the housing markets, the impact on some of the zoning designations that are stated in this bill, and the growth of that impact on my own district. So I just wanted to thank the council member for sticking with the issue. Let her and all you know that I will be supporting this at a committee, but reserving the right pending further information on the floor as I really can digest this complicated growth in our communities in my district specifically. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210474.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210474 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Curtis Jones seconds the motion that has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210474 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. For the record, we were holding bill number 210225. Before we conclude, I just want to again state for the record that we were holding bill number 210225 at the request of the sponsor. I want to thank all of my colleagues for their hard work and their dedication and participation in this hearing today. And this concludes the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. There is no additional business that will be conducted today. And so this concludes the rules hearing today. Thank you very much, and good job, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good
Great
job,
job,
Chair.
Thank you.